Egan, and I welcome you to this Adult Career Pathways webinar this afternoon. This is our second one. We're focused on co-teaching, and if you need technical assistance during the course of this webinar, please chat directly to Gail Rutan, our events manager. And just a few notes on the screen. You've probably seen this before in another Atlas event. Heads up that this webinar will be recorded. We do ask that you use your first and last name, just like you would in a name tag if we were able to meet in person, and then some controls information at the bottom. You might want to open your chat box. That's one thing that sometimes people don't open, and then chats come and they just fly right away off your screen. So go ahead and keep that open for the duration of the webinar. I'll turn things over to Heather. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Patsy, and welcome everyone. We are having our second ACP webinar series. Today, the first one was back at our fall Teaching and Learning at a Distance conference, and that was working with healthcare sectors, and we had Meg and Callie present at that first webinar. Today's webinar is focused on collaboration in adult career pathways, ACPs, specifically on co-teaching for student success. And we are having a few guests here today. We've got Julie Dinkow, who's the ABE Transitions Specialist at the Department of Education. We're also honored that Astrid is here too, Astrid Leiden, who's the ABE Professional Development Specialist at MDE. Patsy, who just was on, is the Atlas Director. I am Heather Turngren. I'm the Atlas Adult Career Pathways Coordinator. And Gail Rutan is our everything here at Atlas, and she is the events manager helping to coordinate these online webinars. We are really fortunate to have Ron Fleischmann here today. He's with South Central College, the Connect supervisor and instructor, and he is our local go-to expert on co-teaching for these particular fields. And I'm very happy to have Ron joining us today. The objectives that we've planned for this webinar is hopefully at the end, you will be able to identify ways that adult career pathways are being delivered with more than one instructor. We'll talk about the ways that Ron is doing it, and then some other ways that could happen, perhaps in your area or across consortium or regions. We also want to make sure that you can clarify some of the definitions or the roles and responsibilities with team teaching or co-teaching within an adult career pathway. We also hope that you can learn and identify some models as well as strategies for team teaching and co-teaching, both the career as well as that basic skills content that is part of this co-teaching experience. And of course, we also want to focus on what some of those key challenges might be or puzzles, as well as successes or solutions that you might be able to discuss in an effective team teaching or co-teaching partnership. Before we begin, there are a few adult career pathway definitions that you might find helpful. We also have this available to you in a PDF if you go to the Atlas website for their adult career pathways resource library. There is the glossary of terms for all things ACP related. I'd like you to look first at the integrated course description here. It is a community and technical college course or similar in which a technical faculty person or a trainer co-teaches with an ABE instructor to build both the basic skills as well as the technical knowledge. So this is what we mean by that integrated course. Part of an integrated course might be integrated education and training, which is that IET, and that is a service approach that provides the adult education and literacy activities concurrently and contextually within the workforce, preparation activities and workforce training. So all of these are components of that co-teaching and team teaching experience that can happen in adult career pathways. There are other definitions that again you can find in that ACP glossary of terms. So how is this happening? How are ACPs being delivered by more than one instructor? How is it happening with co-teaching? And here I'd like to turn it over to our colleague, Julie Dinkow. She's going to discuss some of the models.
Thank you, Heather, and good afternoon, everyone. What you see listed are three of the primary examples of how co-teaching, team teaching is done. The adult basic education field first in Minnesota first started exploring team teaching through the Fast Track initiative. And a lot of those team teaching experiences were done with Minnesota State, the two-year community college system here in Minnesota. And what we realized is that team teaching is actually in the faculty contract, and that they have certain parameters around what that means when you team teach with a Minnesota State faculty member. And so we commonly will use co-teaching or integrated instruction to reflect basically the same concept. Is traditional team teaching or integrated instruction where both teachers actively share the responsibility of instruction of both skills and content to all students. In short, the equal work and responsibility for two teachers. That means the adult basic education instructor is bringing in the academic content knowledge, and then you have the skills trainer, the technical skills training, and that person has the skill knowledge, and you bring both of those into the classroom equally. Then there is complementary supportive teaching, where one teacher is responsible for teaching the content to the students, while the other teacher is responsible for follow-up activities related to the applicable content and skills. This is also done in various forms in Minnesota. You'll often see a ABE instructor in the classroom with the skills training being presented, and then spending an hour afterwards going over some of the concepts that have been taught in the class, and drilling down on some of those that might not be as understandable for adult basic education learners. And then a third is a monitoring teacher. One teacher is responsible for providing the content and skills instruction, while the other teacher roams the class, observing and monitoring the students' understanding and engagement. We see less of this in adult basic education, and this is one model we don't necessarily encourage, because it's a little bit more of an assistant role. And in Minnesota, we like to see adult basic education teachers teaching the content of our profession. And so there's no fine lines to any of these. They can be intermixed, and they often are, but these are just some models that have been studied and that they developed. And it comes from CalPro. If you want more information on that, there's the link down below. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Heather.
Thanks, Julie. And again, I think it's so well stated by you that there is not that fine line. It's not like I do only this or only that. And it can be a challenge sometimes, and we'll discuss that further. Right now, we'd like to hear from you, those of you who are joining us for this webinar. So are you currently working with a college? Is your program partnering with a college? What sort of partnerships does that involve, or what does it look like? And maybe in your city, your town, in your region, your area. We'd like to have you be part of this webinar, and so use the chat feature to type out and share what's happening in your area. I'm going to look to my colleague. I think Patsy is going to let us know what's happening around the state of Minnesota as you are.
I will watch the chat here, so feel free to let us know what's happening. We'll give people a moment to respond and find their keyboards. So Ron is already at it here, tells us working in North Mankato with South Central Community College, Riverland College. Penny Yankee joins in, has some English prep and tech math happening. Russ has joined us to say encouraging and supporting teachers and college faculty. Some work happening at Inver Hills with the TEAS program. Oh, now they're coming in fast here. Okay, Red Wing in Winona, Leech Lake Tribal Vietnamese Social Services is working with St. Paul College. Excellent. Looks like developmental education math happening with Laura mentions with the Leech Lake Tribal College. Co-teaching healthcare, Mag mentions up in the St. Cloud area. And the RN teacher will be providing an overview.
So from what you're saying, Patsy, it seems like there's a lot of partnerships happening around the state.
There certainly are, yeah. I imagine they take different shapes, but we are definitely seeing from all over the state. Looks like most of the state is represented in the chat box here. A lot of good things happening. Kirsten chimes in from Northwest saying, co-teaching several levels of math with 2 local college campuses, Northland Community and Technical. Looks like math is a popular one to be co-teaching.
Yeah, there's a lot of math, I think, happening.
And then in your neck of the woods, Heather, we're seeing someone in Minneapolis saying customer service, business and career, digital literacy, English and healthcare, English for manufacturing. That from Gloria. Thank you. Rebecca's here from Mankato saying she's also co-teaching math with the college, same college that Ron is at.
So I guess math has it, right? If we are making a tally, there is a lot of co-teaching with math. And I believe that that's at that developmental education level, correct?
That's certainly how it sounds. Yeah. If we have time, Heather, we could ask someone to speak up around, developmental ed, Rebecca says. Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. So not necessarily career pathways, but leading toward, I would assume, a career pathway if people are taking math for a prerequisite of some kind, perhaps to enter a career cluster. Tech math is for credit, Penny says in her area.
I know in my particular program in Minneapolis Adult Ed, we do have an ABE teacher. It's not co-teaching, but she's teaching that Dev Ed math. And many of the students need that, as you mentioned, Patsy, as that prereq to get into that career pathway.
Right. We heard from someone over in Hopkins Adult Options in Education saying that they partner with Hennepin Tech, medical terminology and child development for credit. And then Russ also mentions that beyond developmental ed, they're also involved in gateway courses.
So that is great. I was worried that it was going to be an empty chat, but this is great.
This is far from quiet. We got a lot happening here. Great. Thank you everyone for chiming in.
And it's great for those of us working with the adult career pathways, work in the state level and for professional development to know what's happening around the state. Sometimes so many things are happening, we are not even aware of it. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think it's time for me to turn my camera off, and I'm going to let you hear from a voice from the field. And as we've discussed, Ron Fleischmann is going to be talking about his co-teaching experience in Minnesota and down in Mankato. So this is going to be great. I'm going to turn it over to Ron. And thanks, Ron.
Good afternoon, everybody. Nice of you to invite me. That's an old picture. I wish I still looked like that. Last couple of years have been hard on all of us. I work at South Central College in North Mankato. I'm the Adult Careers Pathways Program Supervisor, and we've recently rebranded to SEC Connects. At one time, thank you, Angie. At one time, we used to be Fast Track, and then we changed the spelling to a different kind of Fast Track. And SEC Connects we thought was a little more appropriate to what we actually help out with at the college. Mankato area adult basic education serves about 820 adult learners, and everyone knows that that vacillates widely. We offer adult career pathways in both healthcare and manufacturing, and now we're looking a little bit into some transportation and those kinds of things as well. So what does this look like? Our team teaching began in what was known as computer integrated machining. I inherited a group, actually. I was hired in very early September. So the group had already gone through our bridge class and we're already in integrated. So for me, my first day of class was in early September. And I walked into the shop, the computer integrated machining shop, and got to meet the teachers. And one of them, his name is John. And I will never forget our first encounter because John came stomping right up to me, and he's all of maybe 5'5", and squares off on me and says, "Who are you and what are you doing in my shop?" So it was an interesting start for us. I'll follow that up in a little bit. His other teacher in that shop, his name is Chris. I sort of knew Chris. Chris is from my hometown. And so Chris was much more open to having me be involved in the class. Volunteer what they don't want to do. And that's where a lot of you are saying, oh yeah, we help with the math. That's something that a lot of folks really don't find a ton of enjoyment, except maybe Rebecca, find a ton of enjoyment doing. So that's sometimes a place where you can volunteer to assist. Next. How does a shared focus benefit students? First of all, it increases the number of people that students can go to for help. Oftentimes, like in our computer integrated machining, our instructors were already busy on machines helping students use those. And so sometimes they weren't as available. And, you know, I got to hang around quite a bit. So they would just come to me for help with things that I've sat in on the classes. So that was always good. When we co-teach, both teachers benefit because they learn some things that I do pretty well with my horse and pony show. And I learn things that they do pretty well. So we actually, our skill sets grow. One of the things, both teachers actually have different skill sets. And oftentimes we'll come at a problem from a different way. And students do too, by the way. Students have different skill sets and learn in different ways. So my example is a teacher who teaches algebra at the college, and he is, in my opinion, masterclass. He's an excellent teacher. And he actually teaches an 8-week algebra class in the summertime. So 4 credits are just crammed. And so he moves at a pretty wild pace. And my job in there was to simply sit back and kind of watch, and maybe even occasionally catch an error on his part, which was fun. But also to sort of catch when students had dropped out. And we went into break, and I had noticed the students sort of tuning out. And I had a chance to go over during break and catch that student and say, "Did you follow that last part?" And they said, "No, that was kind of difficult." And then I asked Ben, "would it be okay if I went to the board and kind of used your stuff here?" And he said, "Absolutely." So I took her up and I sort of addressed it from a different angle. And then she was able to catch up by the time break was over. So those kinds of things really help. How did we figure out the shared roles? It began with informal discussions and building relationships. And if you've been doing this for any length of time, you better be tuned into the relationships that you have, because that's going to be your in. Setting up times to be very intentional about future plans. Everyone uses Google Calendar. We'll set up time to do that. Or after a class, I'll go and visit with them and say, you know, maybe we should really sit down and talk through this. Or they'll come to me and say, you know, are you interested in kind of doing this? Because I hate doing this. Oh, okay. The remember about community college instructors piece. Unless you're really teaching math or English reading, something like that, they're content area specialists. We are education specialists. So for example, my friend John, he squared off on me day one, but by Christmas time, he recognized that I could really help him with the teaching end. And so he offered to help me. And where it says growing your skill set, he came in on his Christmas break, let me use his tools, and together we got, I got 4 of my NIMS credentials, National Institute of Machining Sciences. So, because one of his questions was legitimately, what are your credentials to be in here? And one of it is, you know, I'm a teacher, I can really help there. But also, I wanted to be able to help the students with hands-on stuff. So I pursued those. Doesn't mean you have to do that. I'm just saying that it also gained me some credits in the school, sort of helped them realize that I might have more to add than just helping with a math problem or helping with setting up homework. Also CPT, that is a certified production technician. So went to classes for that and actually got trained to be a trainer in that. And just recently, the PPBO, I love throwing these out because people look at them and go, I know most of those, I don't think I know that. It's a precision press brake operator. One of the things that we're doing in our welding is expanding into more areas in fabrication, and one of them is operating a press brake. And I've noticed with our partners, very few people actually have that. And so I thought, well, I'll start out so I can be more of a help to students that way. So, and then the other way I can really help is just becoming an expert at college systems, WIDS, D2L, advising, registering, using the DARs. I would say FAFSA, but I recognize when I'm not an expert, but I can lead them to the right people who are experts in those areas. So I actually get to help with those things as well. How did you build in planning time? All it really took was one teacher to say, you know, you do this better than I do. Would you be interested in taking the next chapter? And that's what happened with Chris, is Chris sort of knew me from our hometown and said, I really don't enjoy teaching this stuff. And I said, I love teaching this stuff because as much as I make fun of math, I really do like to teach some of it. And so he gave me the book and the teacher's manual and said, why don't you do the next chapter? I'll sit in on class and we'll kind of work on it together. And it was fun. I had a little slide presentation, knocked it all together, and it went very well. It didn't really take long to change that approach then. Once that worked, he was like, you want to take the next one? You want to take the next one? And eventually we sort of bounced back and forth. And sometimes I would sit in the back and add comments, and other times I'd be up front sharing content and he would be adding comments. If you have the opportunity to share office space with an instructor, it is absolutely invaluable. Beg to have a little corner, a little desk. You can come in with your laptop, but being able to share that informal time is absolutely precious. Google Calendar and Post-it notes. If I want to set up something, be intentional about it, I'll send out a Google Calendar. But oftentimes, if I have a hallway conversation or someone comes into the office and says, oh, by the way, we really ought to do that, I'll jot myself a little Post-it note. It earns its place right in front of my keyboard. And I don't get away from that until that's done, and then I can throw the Post-it note away. What does it look like in the classroom? Certainly in the beginning, and oftentimes, I'll sit back and get a student's perspective. I will take notes a mile a minute, just like a student would. I will offer comments from the peanut gallery. If you're really old like me, you might know what the peanut gallery is, but basically it's just calling out, hey, I think you might have gotten that wrong. Or you know, this is another way to look at that. And I'll raise my hand. I won't interrupt a lesson, but I also am not real shy about adding something to it if I think it will add. I'll offer to share different takes on the same problem. Yes, that's one way to do it. But also the way I learned, would it be okay for me to show this to you? Absolutely. Come up, do that on the board. And students have a chance to learn from both ways. And sometimes the instructor will ask me to take the lesson, and they'll be the ones yelling or heckling from the peanut gallery, depending on the case. What are challenges and successes? And these were notes that you had put, so I put little notes behind them. Not enough advance notice of collaboration. Again, absolutely. Like I said, I walked in and he said, "Who are you and what are you doing in my shop?" And why didn't I know was his next question. So building those relationships is invaluable. There wasn't any time I had to prepare just-in-time comments. When we're doing something, if I catch an error or if I see a student who's basically blanked out. So I'll be taking notes, but I'll also be looking around to see, and remember too, that if you feel that somebody dropped out or has a question, they may be very afraid to ask that question, but just jump in there, raise your hand and ask the question, because if you have it, 3 other people probably do and are afraid to ask it. The occupational instructor didn't see me as an equal, and eyeglasses is my example. I'm very blessed to be 61 years old and not have to use any eyeglasses yet, which is very unusual. But there are, both of my children had eyeglasses in grade school. So we all have different skill sets. So your occupational instructor might say, well, what do you know about machining? Yeah, may not know that much about machining, but what do you know about laying out your textbook? So there are areas that I can be the expert on, that I can assist with. If you have a relationship with them, they seek you out. They ask for you for the time. So yeah, maybe we can't sit down and say, all right, I'm going to teach this and you teach that. But after they see that you've got some teaching chops and you have some excitement about this, they would be really glad to invite you in so they can focus on some other opportunities. At least that's been my experience. Key advice. It's not easy and it takes time. For me, one of the things I think was a benefit for me is I had never worked in ABE before this position. So when I came in, I didn't have preconceived notions. I didn't have those voices in the back saying, yeah, we tried that and it didn't work. So I'm really not afraid to try anything because it just might work. You need to find the right people at your local college to be champions. And like I said, when you're doing the call outs from the peanut gallery and sharing that you have some skills, they will seek you out. Collect data on particularly the completion rate of your students and the resilience of the students. So you can see how they've retained those students because you've been able to provide a little more help and support. Don't be surprised if sometimes the support that you provide is an understanding ear and I know where to send you. I think that is helpful too. Know your own skill set, and that's really hard. And offer to clean out the barn. I'm a city boy, but I also know the worst job on the farm is cleaning out the barn. So oftentimes, if people are reading ahead, way to go. Oftentimes when you're in the classroom and something comes up, for Chris, it was, I really don't like teaching this math stuff. Well, I can clean out that barn. I have some math skills and I can put together what's in your textbook and prepare it? Absolutely. So don't be afraid to do those rotten things for them, because later on, for example, John will come to me when they're setting up a new class and he'll say, I've got this new textbook. I really don't know how to set up the calendar. Would you spend some time with me on this? And so we'll do that together, because you recognize that's my skill set. And then become a social hub. I am very well known at the college as being the guy who brings the greatest donuts in all the world from a little bakery in New Ulm called the Bakery. And I always bring plenty. And people come seek me out just to grab a donut. And you would be surprised how much traction that will gain with people just knowing you as a person. Then they can come to you with odd questions, or I have the student that's really struggling. Is there any chance you can spend time? One of the things in ABE that we've been kind of against doing is don't give the milk out when, make them buy the cow. And I'll give the milk out any day of the week, because what'll happen is then they'll realize the cow has value. So if they have a student that needs a little extra help, yes, my students come first, but I will make time to help them. And then they will realize that is helpful. There you go. Next. Some co-teach, team teaching resources. Again, don't be afraid to shovel out the barn. Boy, are these barn things. So I've served on college initiative teams. We're trying to get everybody to do this, or get everybody to donate to the college scholarship fund, or whatever it is. Serve on those. They'll be glad to have your help, and you get to know some other people that way. It really is shoveling out the barn, but it's worth it. Make sure that you're asking to go to the advisory committee meetings of the different areas that you work with. It's a great chance to get to know the partners. Try and always get your nose into advising registering. It's a great chance to get to know the students before they've even started, so you're a familiar, friendly face already. Take advantage of the Adult Career Pathway Program cohort and manager cohorts if you haven't already. What great opportunities those have given me. I've taken some training in contextualized instruction, which has been very helpful as well. So when you're doing your bridges, you're not just teaching math, but you're teaching math with an end goal. And I always tell my bridge students, if you raise your hand and say, why do I need to know this for my job? And I can't give you an answer, I'll move on. So you should always be focusing on what context does this math really have to fall in for my students. Wow, that was a lot of information.
Ron, you might think it's a lot of information, but it was great information. And I only wish we had donuts that we could share with the participants of the webinar. But yeah, I like that you keep on bringing this idea. It's those relationships. And as we have worked with Adult Career Pathways over the years, it comes down to those relationships that we build, not only with the colleges, but most importantly, with our students, our shared students, and then with the instructor.
Yep, absolutely.
Really great advice. And right now, I'd like to see if people have questions for Ron. You can chat. Patsy can read out what you guys are using in the chat, but what's a takeaway that you noticed from what Ron was sharing with us? Or if you perhaps have a question for Ron and his presentation. Ron was kind enough to share his email address that you can see down at the bottom. If you have a question that perhaps won't get answered, or you have a question after the webinar, feel free to jot down his email, and he's so kind that he will respond.
Great. Thank you so much, Ron. Yeah, I'll let people find their keyboards and find their chat boxes and let us know. he will stay on the line while you have questions. And thank you to Gail for, oh, we're wondering if we can clone you. That's our first question. Thank you to Gail for including his email in the.
I'll answer that one. That's an easy, hard pass on that. I have a lot of people who would line up and say, don't you ever do that. So thank you, but no.
Well, it sounds like you are an excellent colleague, not only for donuts. So thank you for all the information. What questions do you have for Ron around his program in Mankato or his relationships with his co-teachers?
And I might just take an opportunity. I can't get into the chat, but Ron, how do you introduce yourself in that shared classroom? Do you
Okay.
introduce yourself, or is it the co-teacher?
It sort of runs both ways. I let the instructor take the lead on that. I won't be called a tutor.
Thank you.
That's not my role. That is not my role, and I make that very clear. Oftentimes they'll just say, you know what, I'll be helping you with other kinds of things, like I'll be helping you with your homework. I'll help you with some barriers you might be having. I will be helping you with organizing your study sessions. I can help with some of the instruction in class. So I just let them know that I actually, in my position, has sort of morphed a little bit. Now I do an awful lot with what people, I hate the term, work with soft skills. One of the things that we work very hard on, particularly in our certificate programs, is really pushing those professional skills of showing up on time and putting your phone away and paying attention and asking questions and those things. What stands out? Oh, yeah. I really spend some time focusing on those things. And initially it was, I was kind of the hard guy of the shop, and I'd go, man, how, would your boss let you come in 10 minutes late every day? How do you think that would fly? And instead, what I've done is my daughter works at a promotions company. So she brings home all these goofy little trinkets. So what I'll do is at random mornings, I'll have everyone put their name in a hat that comes in on time. And then the first person who comes in late, they get to pull the name of the winner out of the hat. And they get to pick from this wide assortment of, some of it's kind of cool and some of it's kind of goofy stuff. Sort of a positive spin to showing up on time.
Yeah, yeah. I've done that in ESL classrooms, and I like to see that it can be done also with that co-teaching. Patsy, are there other questions?
We do have a question. Penny, I wonder if you'd want to just unmute and speak up in the chat. And let me see if.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Penny.
Yes.
So we're starting this year doing the co-teaching or whatever. So we have one college teacher, and granted, the circumstances couldn't have been any worse. She was hired a week before. But what we're finding is, so it's one math teacher, and she goes between two towns. And so there's two ABE teachers, because one's doing it in Austin and one's doing it in Albert Lea. And it is very apparent to anyone that she likes working with one of the ABE teachers, and she does not like working with the other ABE teacher. So we're really trying to figure out, and I think part of the problem is the teacher that she loves working with that is not a math teacher. And so that teacher is way more willing to take a step back and not. And the other teacher is a 40-year retired math teacher. So any suggestions you have, because of course the teacher who does not have a math background is loving, and just because it's super duper, and they're working with 13 students, and the math teacher, my math teacher, is working with 52 students in 2 sections, and is not okay just doing that, sitting back and I'm going to watch you teach. So it's been a struggle.
Yeah, I'll respond first anyway. The first thing I would say to the very experienced math teacher is be willing to do, to shovel out the barn. As much as you've got all these years and all this experience, and you could probably teach circles around this person, it's their class. So do the hard work with them first, and show them that I think they're also probably intimidated, I would guess. I suppose I would be. So ask them to be humble, ask them to step back, ask them to be supportive, and work on, obviously it's a relationship issue there, because it certainly isn't a skill set issue. Donuts wouldn't hurt.
Great, thank you, Ron.
Well, and I think, thanks, Ron, and that's, and this is, I think, sometimes from ABE perspective, finding, we talked about finding the right teacher from the community college. Also, it's finding the right teacher from ABE, because for one thing, we're really desperate to find teachers that can even teach in ABE. But yeah, let's just say, how many times it's gone through my mind, like, okay, this might not be the best teacher because of that. And then I'm like, okay, then who am I going to get to, I understand probably what needs to be done, but it is really hard to find that goal. And you are right. And I probably just do need to have that conversation with my teacher, and she just might not be the teacher in ABE to do this role.
Well, and hopefully you don't lose the instructor because of it. Just take the teacher to a different spot, because it sounds like this teacher has a wealth of knowledge. You don't want to lose that. So maybe reassign them if it's possible for them, because they're obviously not enjoying it either, I would suspect.
Thank you for the questions, Penny, and for your thoughts, Ron. Anyone else? I'm not seeing anything else in the chat yet, but if you would care to unmute, you're certainly welcome to as well. Other questions he can address for you? Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Heather.
Okay, thanks, Patsy. Thanks, Penny, for the great question, and Ron for your great advice, because I think people do have some questions on this. What we have planned for our next part of the webinar is to get into small groups and discuss and maybe dissect some of the information that Ron shared with us a little bit further. So let's discuss some of the challenges and solutions in small groups. And we're fortunate that Gail is going to be helping us with the technology. She's going to be assigning us to different breakout groups. I'd like you to make sure you note your group number, because we have a note-taking page that will be shared in the chat, I think,
It's already there. Yeah, thank you to Gail for sharing that. So you can click on that link that Gail just shared, and that'll take you to the note-taking doc, and that actually has the questions already in it.
Yeah, and there'll be a number there for your group so that you can write down who the participants are. And then we have some guiding questions to help you with this small group discussion. And once you're in your group, you can choose someone to take the notes. And it might be easiest, I do this in my classroom, to say the first person who has the name closest to the letter A in the alphabetical order. Use the guiding questions for a 15-minute discussion. And then we'll regroup after 15 minutes. Zoom is fantastic, and it just brings us automatically back to a large webinar group like this. And then we can have you share one or two highlights from your discussion. The document that we are working with, you will have access to. So if you want to continue this discussion further, or maybe grab some of the information that you are learning and sharing within your groups, you have access to that.
Great. So I just want to encourage people to really participate. Take this time. We don't get to spend much time together anymore. So this is your chance to connect with your colleagues. So there's a tendency when we go into small breakouts to take off. Don't be that person. Like let's stick around, have a little conversation here, stick with us, and you'll find some gold. That's my suggestion. So Gail, when you're ready, send us to the groups.
Okay, I'm sending you right now.
Thank you.
Okay, and then you can turn on your cameras once you're in your group, so you get to see who you're speaking with.
Elizabeth, are you not in a room?
I don't know. I'm seeing Gail and Dave and Julie.
Huh, okay, let's see. Let me see if I can put you in there. Okay, Elizabeth, it just shows that you haven't joined.
Let's see.
Well, let me see. I'm just going to put you in. Maybe I haven't
Okay.
assigned you here.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Thanks all for having that discussion. I'm sure you had a lot to discuss. What we'd like to do is have you share 1 or 2 highlights from your small group discussions. You could unmute yourself or use the chat. What I thought might be nice is for us to look at that document and then we could read along. And I'll just go in group order. So we've got the first group here. Let's take a look. Here is the document. I'm going to try to make it as big as possible. How's that? Are you able to see it? If I enlarge it?
Yeah, that looks good. And I'll
Okay,
just
so
ask those people who aren't speaking to go ahead and turn your cameras off just for bandwidth. Looks like Patrick and Julie have theirs on. If you want to go ahead and turn that off, just so we can keep, there we go. All right, thanks, Heather, go ahead.
great. So our first group, we had Tracy and Elizabeth, Rebecca, Tammy, and Kathleen. So I'm wondering if one of you would like to unmute and then just maybe share some of your highlights in your discussion. I'm not sure who did the note-taking.
I did the note taking. So please do not pay attention to the grammar, the spelling, etc. I'm not a person that.
Not at all, but Tracy, introduce yourself so people know who they're hearing.
Tracy Chase, and I'm the manager for AUA's Adult Ed program. We are
And you're welcome to turn your camera on if you like, but you're certainly not obligated.
Well, I actually am docked, and so you're going to just see my computer. You will not see me.
Well, no worries. So what did your group have to say?
We said a lot. Not everybody. So we kind of got stuck on the first question, and we were really going to town, and had to quickly go through the last 2. But some of the people in the group had not had yet the experiences of co-teaching. And we also found that with one of the programs that there really isn't the co-teaching. It's now going into its second session. It's a carpentry where ABE met with the program director, but not with the instructor. And so there's some disconnect. And so we really feel it's important to make those connections, to be able to find out what that other person is doing. And then we've also had people in the group who have sat in with the instructor. So that way, during that whole time, and may not have been necessarily presenting, but at least getting an idea of what was taking place. And so lots of good experiences. I said for myself in the Northeast, we've been fortunate to be on campuses, and one of the campuses that ABE is looked at in a great light is Hibbing Community College, and their provost is not, who thought my staff was the next best thing to slice bread. He now is the head of the new NEHEAD district. And so I'm hoping that with having that type of, of their, of his desire, like of ABE, that we'll be able to fit into more places.
Tracy, again, it comes to that relationship, right?
Yes.
Exactly. That is a really big part of ACPs. So great. So other people, if you have access to the shared Google Doc. You can read along with the notes. And you know what, Tracy, I always tell even my students in the class, it's never about the spelling, it's more about the content. So that's what we're going for, right?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Let's take a look here at group 2. We had Penny and Sherry, we had Karen, Susan, and Ron joined your group as well. Does someone want to share what you discussed?
Sure. So this is Penny Yankee. I'm in Albert Lee. So we just talked about that. Again, we emphasized about the expert being the college instructor. And then we just really talked about the importance of the relationship, and don't assume, that everyone knows, because our lingo is different than their lingo. And even just like for an ABE instructor to go onto the college that they've never been there, they have no idea what to do or different things. So there, there's a big learning curve there. Just like Tracy said, we got stuck on that first question, but the first question pretty much went to the challenges again, the relationship, the personalities, and making the time to plan. And then again, the benefits. It's what Ron and everyone said. We're all doing this because we want student success. So the rest of it is all should fall along on the wayside, because really we are all doing this to have students succeed. And I just want to, Tracy had said about, on there about the lab time. That is one thing we learned very early on in this. We made our lab optional, and we learned out very quickly it just needs to be built right into their schedule. So the 2-day math is just going to be 4 days a week next semester. So it's not an option, because that's what was happening here to a class of like 52 students out of 2 classes. We were getting like 8. So it's good to have those discussions and what's working right and what's not working.
Yeah, and you can learn from your experiences in the past, and thank you for sharing it with the other people who are here in the webinar and those who might be watching the recording, because this is how we learn, right? From some of what we've done in the past, and we can move forward. But I like what you said, just keep that eye on the prize, right? And that's student success. And if we can keep our focus on that, everything else, as you say, just goes to the wayside. Thanks, Penny, for sharing for that group. We've got group 3. We had Russ and Dave and Lori and Julie. Would someone want to, you guys can share your camera so people can see you, but would someone like to debrief and give us one idea or highlight 1 or 2 that you discussed? Thanks, Russ. I think you might be muted.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, just didn't want to click in. Well, to start, we had a little bit of technical difficulty about getting everyone in the room. But then we did. We got in the same space, and what we discovered is that everyone in the space really did not have experience with co-teaching at this point in time. They're more interested in kind of learning from others. The unique situation is Lori is from a correctional facility, and they're challenged with, we got inmates, right? We've got people and they're just now starting to use Zoom in a kind of a moderated, secured kind of environment. And so they're kind of contemplating how could they, bring in outside expertise to even start with, right? Into some type of experience. So I think she's just sort of looking and trying to, consider options. And then Dave, who's from Robbinsdale, was new to this space as well. He's been in the position of a couple of years and recognizes that they need to do more in the adult career pathways. But one of the challenges that they face is that because there are shared ABE programs or in the geographic area that have a relationship with colleges, working your way into that relationship with a college, or more specifically with faculty, can be difficult because there's already established relationships. And so the things we talked about there was, maybe taking a look at what are some of those maybe shared opportunities for pathways where a number of programs can assist or help get students into a particular pathway, where working together would help fill that class. And that's what Julie from Alexandria was sort of talking about, who also is new to this and just kind of trying to establish relationships with their college. Is she has a TEAS prep that's not generating enough students that are involved, and kind of looking at how could that be maybe a shared offering so that a number of programs can partner together. And so we really didn't get much to the co-teaching side of this because there's some really more fundamental things that really have to happen first to actually get to this prize, which is let's work together with the college program to make some stuff happen.
Great.
So,
And
yep.
yeah, we can learn from each other, right? And I like
Right.
that you said that we have to have these things in place before we can even have that co-teaching begin
Right.
to happen and be successful.
Right.
Russ, while you're unmuted, would you mind just briefly letting the group know about the affinity group that you've started? And I will post the flyer in the chat in case people are interested in.
Oh, you're kind to do that. I'll just make it brief. I'm a regional transitions coordinator in the Northwest region. I also do it in the East Metro region. And for years, we've been having various degrees of success working with our Minnesota State campuses there to be engaged in developmental education, adult basic education partnerships. And what we came to recognize in that process of study and how do we generate more instances of that? How do we move maybe from individual champions to institutional champions? One of the things or strategies we looked at was, well, we are having some success here, but clearly there's a lot of examples of success throughout the state. And so what we have been in the process of doing is form what we call an affinity group, which is bringing together Minnesota State partners that range from faculty to deans to advisors and navigators who have this common sort of interest of working with the dev ed students and helping them complete and be successful. And then we have adult basic education people who are either in those classrooms already or desire to be in those relationships. And so we have had a couple of initial meetings with over 60 something people involved. And that particular affinity group, which is really turning more so into a work group, they're going to continue to meet in January, February to March, and then in April around topics of interest to the group for advancing this partnership. And so thank you, Astrid, for that. I will share with you a couple of the outcomes we're looking at is to build some type of toolkit so that it's useful to practitioners. And so we will do that. We're going to work around things about data collection and how do we express the success of adult basic education being involved. We're going to get much clearer about our value proposition, which has to do with the things Ron mentioned, which and got us talking about, which is what does adult basic education uniquely bring to the partnership that is of value to students and of value to the campus in that classroom. So, and then I'm trying to think of the other obviously is what is the professional development needs of the partners to move forward. And so this is a long range. We started last year. It's going to be a couple of years in business coming forward. So that's essentially it. And we have a meeting tomorrow. And I think Astrid will indicate this to you if you want to get involved in it. It's from 10 to 11:15. You got to go to that survey right now and sign up so I can get you into a group and get you all the communication you need. Thank you, Astrid.
Great, thanks, Russ. It seems like it could piggyback with this discussion, just about that co-teaching and being on that campus.
Right, exactly.
Great, let's take a look here at group number 4. We had Meg and Jane and Patty, Gloria, Cindy, and Laura. Does someone want to perhaps share their video camera and let us know some of the highlights in your small group discussion? If no one jumps out, you know I'm going to choose someone. I'm not sure who did the writing. I could look to Gloria or Meg.
This is Laura. I'll share.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you.
Sorry, I was answering my son on the phone. So, yeah, we just talked about the rules. So we just want to focus on ACE support. And again, partnering is what's important. Is collaborating, talking things through. We talked about a couple of carpentry classes that some sites had. That the AB group will work with interview skills. They had the distinct roles, so they do it in different spots, so it's not in the carpentry class. And then the carpentry components are done within their classroom. So they're not in each other's territory necessarily. Again, finding teachers who, this is what they want to do, is work together and collaborate and share. So that's how they do the co-teaching, is each define the roles and who's doing what and where. And the other part was challenges. We have definitely right now the COVID. You have constantly changing plans, adapting, who's going to do what online, who's going to do the curriculum, who's going to teach the curriculum, who's going to help out, how do we both talk at the same time kind of deal. Thinking about, well, do we want both of us teaching at the same time or taking turns, or one is there and the other one's being supportive and walking around and helping and then giving additional instruction as needed. The other thing we thought was a challenge and also a success was work with teachers who want to co-teach. Some people don't, and that's what we decided that was it's either a positive or it could be a negative. So there again, the separate roles, separate rooms, separate roles within the same room sometimes works. And again, how are you going to do right now for the unforeseeable future, the remote or online teaching? Keep going, keep it separate, what pieces are going to be doing for which. And then the other piece that we had is, but most important was, what do the students need? And looking at who can best meet their needs by the strategies, styles, and personalities of both students and the teachers. So taking everything into consideration and then adjusting as needed and adapting as needed.
It seems like really great advice, right? And you brought in that other complexity of trying to do everything remotely.
Yes.
Like planning and teaching. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to go down to our final group here. We had Joyce and Allison, Teresa, Michelle, Patrick, and Jill. Is there someone who would like to share their highlights? You can also share your video if you'd like. I'm not sure who was the note taker, maybe that person. Otherwise, I'm going to choose someone.
I was the scribe. I was trying to put it in, but I was on the wrong
Okay,
sheet.
thanks, Jill. Thank you.
I didn't do most of the talking though, so I didn't. Basically, we really didn't even get past the first one because that sharing the roles and how to collaborate. You can't move on until you really have established the rules. And in some of these, places, there's been some bad relationships, and trying to figure out how to get over those is a big challenge. Or in my case, you have someone, the dean at the college was a former ABE teacher, and when she left, you kind of lose that contact, and the changing personnel can make things very interesting too.
Yeah, Jill, it goes back to relationships. I mean, I know people say for businesses, it's location, location, location. For this co-teaching, it's relationships. And I like how you point out there are those negative relationships that you have to maybe step back and then reestablish them.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing. And again, you have this information if you need to contact or just want to connect with some of the other people from the webinar. I'm going to bring us back here to our presentation. Let's take
Heather?
a moment. Yeah.
This is Ron. I'm going to be bugging out here. I just had one more thought as the conversation moved on. I'm remembering back to my very first year coming in, and I'm 7 years down the line in this, by the way. So my first year, I was working strictly with my bridge students. So I was sitting in every class, taking notes all the time, having separate training sessions with my students. And they were some of my best ambassadors to go out to their other students and say, yeah, Ron really helps us in this. You might want to see if it's okay to sit in on it. So I would have a much larger group than just my students sitting in on my extra sessions where we would review and prep for tests and things like that. So that's an opportunity too.
Yeah, you could be a student and then you bring the students in, right?
There you go.
Yeah. So thanks, Ron, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. So I'd like to take a moment just to let you know on how you can begin or further these partnerships with local colleges as well as the co-teaching. We're really lucky that we have many different resources to share with you. And in some areas, there might not be these resources available. One, and I think Gail is going to be chatting this out to you, this comes from the Ed Tech Center of World Education. They have a really great online course. It's self-paced, so you can decide when you want to study. It takes approximately 3 hours, and it's all on team teaching with different models and practicing. They also have a little bit more advanced course, but you would need to have a cohort of at least 8 participants to work with Ed Tech and World Education on that. So this would be a great resource for those of you who are still thinking about moving to this model. Of course, Atlas has many resources for you. You can go to the Atlas website, you can click on resources, and right here we've got our Adult Career Pathways resources, as well as some of the resources that were mentioned in the highlights, the ACEs. Within the Adult Career Pathways, we have tools and resources in our resource library. One is coming from the Adult Career Pathways Toolkit, and it's partnering with post-secondary. And there's some issue briefs in there that may be of use to you, but there are different resources available for you. And I'd like to invite you, if you haven't already joined the Adult Career Pathways Schoology networking group, it's a group that I facilitate within Schoology. Gail is going to put into the chat a link to a document that will show you the steps to get into this networking group. And I think Allison is here, so I just want to say thanks, Allison, for all of your great posts and other communication of ideas that you have within Adult Career Pathways. And these are the steps, and it is in that Google Doc that is shared with you. And with that, I'd like to see if anyone has a question on some of those resources. You could put it in the chat, or you can reach out to me and I could help you get some of those resources. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Patsy.
Sure. Hi, everyone. We just want to be sure a couple of things are on your radar that are coming up. The Language and Literacy Institute, of course, will be virtual, but that will be, as usual, the end of January. Here's the one year we really should have a blizzard. We always worry about it for this particular event, and this year would be the year because we're all going to be in the safety of our own homes. So the last Thursday and Friday of January, registration will open in early January, January 5th. The schedule, like the skeleton of the schedule, is already up on the events calendar. You can check that out. We really encourage people to come. These are going to be, we're confirming sessions now. It's going to be fantastic. And we will have an Adult Career Pathways session. It's actually going to be focused on supporting English learners in Adult Career Pathway environments. So join us for that, as well as the rest of the 2 days. Our third webinar is coming up on February 23rd, and Gail already chatted out that link a little bit ago about how to get information about that. And that'll be focused on employers and career force. And then we might change the title, but for the moment, we're sticking with our statewide all regional conference. Of course, in lieu of spring regionals, normally we'd be traveling around the state, bringing you 3 different regionals, North, South, and Metro. Instead, we'll have one large virtual event, and that's going to be March 4th and 5th. So please mark your calendars. And of course, there'll be something for career pathways there as well.
Great, thank you, Patsy.
You bet.
This is all really great professional development opportunities focused on adult career pathways. And with that, I would like to thank you, and I will see you all in 2021, because I am probably like you, I can't wait till 2020 is over. So
And I want to
thank you
give
all.
a big shout out to Heather for all of her help wrangling today's webinar and putting all of the content together, as always, doing a superb job. And then we, just let us know if there's something you need, or if there's some other PD that you're interested in around career pathways. We have a transitions advisory team that helps us put these together. Let us know, let me know, or Heather. And then someone did ask when the recording would be available. Very soon, I'll get that up on the YouTube channel. And I believe, Heather, you'll put that in Schoology as well, correct?
Yes, I put it into this ACP Schoology group.
So usually within a day or two, whoever asked that question will get that to you. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time today. We'll hang out for a couple minutes if you have anything else, but we'll go ahead and stop the recording. So if there are questions you were waiting to ask offline, now would be the time. Thank you.
Thank you for attending. Have a great day.